How's it going, everyone? Hope you're having a good day. Today we had on Alex Rubio. He's former Coast Guard and he's big into gardening. Today we get into some very interesting conversation on, you know, gardening, but also agriculture and a bunch of different things. I think it's honestly one of the better podcasts I've ever done. So I hope you enjoy it. Please give it a chance. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But with that being said, here it is, and I hope you have a wonderful day. So how's it going, man? How you been?
It's going pretty good. Yeah, the weather's been really nice up here in New Hampshire. Been doing a lot of gardening. It's been a little dry, a little drier than I'd like, but it's been good so far. It's been a really nice summer.
Yeah, I don't think we can complain with the weather because it's been kind of wild in terms of like we really haven't had that many days of like rain or anything like that. But the rain we
Yeah,
have gotten has been like super heavy rain. Like I think it was like 2 weeks ago we had this heavy rainstorm come down, and it was raining so hard my air conditioner stopped working, and water it flooded it and started dumping water into the window.
yeah, that's pretty wild. You're a few hours away from me, so I mean, I'd imagine obviously we have different climates we're dealing with and different weather patterns, but it's been pretty dry up here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how's that
a whole
affected
lot of
your
rain.
gardening?
Oh yeah, yeah. But gardening's a big part of what I do. Um, in the afternoons after work. Um, I really enjoy it. It's kind of an obsessive hobby that I've really gotten into, and it's been beneficial. I've liked it a lot.
Yeah. Has the lack of rain really affected your crop so far? Or?
It has. I have had to buy I'm basically running water to the back of my property. It's probably I don't know maybe like 100 yards, but I have had to buy some water hoses to kind of get water back there. Last year I kind of left it up to nature to see how it'd work out. Really wasn't enough water last year either, so
Huh.
it's been good so far. I've been doing a lot more watering, paying for a lot more water because I go through the city water system. But it's been good overall. It's been pretty beneficial.
Well, that's good. Now,
Yeah.
how did that work out last year for your crops? Was it like,
Not very good. They didn't really thrive as well as they should have. They kind of get, if they get dried out, they're not getting everything they need. Um, they start getting kind of, they're more susceptible to diseases and pests. You notice the bugs start chewing at them more, and they just get overall problems from not getting, you know, the water, the nutrition they need. So I was kind of go about it from like a hands off approach. It's kind of letting put some plants out there and see what'll happen, see what'll thrive, see what dies off. Um, I think for the effort, it's better just to kind of take a little bit more control over the process and make sure that everything's getting what it needs.
yeah,
Um, you know, you invest money and time into like an apple tree and it dies in a couple of years. It's a lot of work you put into it.
yeah, it's almost kind of like sad at that point, like especially if it dies out after you put so much time into it.
Hmm.
What now? What really got you into gardening? Like, because you were in the Coast Guard, so it's like I can imagine you didn't do much gardening when you were in the Coast Guard.
No, not
Um,
really. No, not at all. Um, I grew up with plants. I grew up in Southern California. So it's pretty much perfect weather year round. Bad weather is overcast with a little bit of rain in like the afternoon. That's considered bad weather. Nobody goes outside type stuff. But my dad always had he had avocado trees in the back. Um, what else did he have? He had this plant that used to grow. It's called a chayote. It's a Mexican plant. It's shaped like a pear, and it kind of tastes like a cross between a cucumber and I don't know. It tastes like a cucumber, kind of. But anyways, he was always gardening. Always kind of growing these kind of odd things. And we had an apricot tree. I just remember how nice it was just having that stuff, taking the stuff right off the tree when I was a kid. Um, I grew up in a pretty urban area, so to be able to have like a few fruit trees was kind of nice. To have the space, to kind of grow a few plants was nice. Um, Being in the Coast Guard, we moved around a lot, so we rented a lot of places. 2-bedroom places, 3-bedroom places. Not a whole lot of yard, not a whole lot of property. But I thought, hey, why not? I'm just going to try growing like a zucchini plant, just see what happens. Remember putting a couple seeds in the dirt, and this plant just took off. It was crazy. I probably had like 5 pounds of zucchini. I didn't do anything special to it. I watered it every once in a while, and I just remember I got a lot of satisfaction out of it. And it's something I kind of continued. I picked up a few more hobbies like making beer. I started making beer probably about 10 years ago. And along with that, I started getting into growing my own hops. I thought that'd be beneficial. It's like, all right, I'm making beer, might as well, add in some fresh hops in the mix. Already like gardening stuff and growing plants and stuff. So
Wow.
it just kind of spiraled from there.
Huh.
So I got fig trees now. I've got rhubarb. I have probably 10 different varieties of hops that I'm growing right now, and apple trees, all kinds of stuff. So
Huh. That's really cool. I don't think like a lot of people kind of dive into gardening as much as people used to, you know?
yeah,
And it's how would you consider it kind of like an art at that point? Because like there's so much care and like how you set up everything and the type of soil you use if it's not like your soil from your yard
mhm.
and kind of everything that goes into it. What would you say like
I mean, I would say, I mean, just like anything that results in like a very impressive, like awesome end product. Like, I mean, you can even baking is probably the most, you know, the easiest example. It's a little bit of art and it is a little bit of science too. You know, there's all different variations, all kinds of things that you can do to make it your own, put your own signature on it. This is my cake that I make. Yes, I followed this recipe. I followed the scientific measurements and everything, but I also added my own little spin on it, which gives it this extra little nuance.
exactly? It kind of reminds me
But
of Breaking Bad. I don't know if you've seen Breaking
oh yeah,
Bad.
love that show. That's a great show. Yeah.
When Jesse Pinkman's making the meth, he puts in chili powder, and that's like his signature thing.
Yeah. So I mean, cooks have been doing it forever, but if you overdo it, if you're like, I'm going to be super nuanced, I'm going to make it extra special. Sometimes you ruin it. You take it too far. It's science, it's art, but it's the balance. I really do believe that. And it's just paying attention to what you're doing too, because there's so many variables, there's so many different things that can happen just in life in general. It also happens with very specific things that you're trying to do every day, like growing plants.
Yeah. And have you had so you've seen the podcast I did with Austin. Have you had any problems with like insects or invasive species on your plants or anything like that?
Yeah. So I purchased this property about 6 years ago. Had a beautiful garden that it was, it hadn't been maintained in a while. You can tell I had like good design, a lot of nice perennials. They all bloomed at different parts of the season and everything. Somebody took a lot of care when they planned this garden out. Just hadn't really been upkept. And the back of the property, especially, I don't think anybody had ever really done anything back there. There's just a lot of brush, a lot of firebush, which is very invasive. There's some Japanese knotweed, which almost looks like a bamboo. It does look kind of nice. It is decorative, but it's invasive. The root system, the rhizome, goes down about 3 feet. It survives the winter. It grows back every year. You try to dig it out, it splits up the little pieces of root, the little rhizomes, into that many more separate little plants that, again, you have to try to eradicate on top of everything. It becomes like it's a mess. Um, Firebush is like that. Japanese knotweed is like that. Um, a lot of beetles, like Japanese beetles, I think that's an invasive species. They eat a lot of the leaves off my apple plants, my apple trees. A lot of the fruit trees get a lot of damage from that. Um, Other than that, it's been pretty good. Deer is probably the biggest one. So in the springtime, when the fruit trees are doing very well, they're growing, they're getting their new branches and potential fruit and everything. That's the time when the deer like to come around and start just nipping the ends off of all these branches that could potentially be fruit.
Hmm.
I see it as kind of like nature's a way of pruning trees. But at the same time, I want this thing to flourish. I want to keep those flowers on there so that they can become fruit eventually. So it is kind of interesting having to deal with nature and just kind of beat it back, but at the same time accept the fact that you're going to take some loss and it's not going to happen exactly the way you want it to. And if you keep up with it, it'll end up being just fine. You get the results you want. Just going to take a little bit more work, probably.
Yeah. And that's kind of like a philosophical approach to it too,
Oh yeah.
which is pretty cool. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more to take in terms of from everything. I don't know, even just gardening or cooking. There's like a lot you can take in terms of like life lessons and philosophy if you look at it a certain way. rather than just being like, ah, shit. Well, this is ruined now, and I'm not gonna do it anymore because I'm sick of it.
You can't do that. No.
No.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can break just about anything down into, philosophical terms. But you have to remember, like these philosophical terms, these are all like proven ideas. These are proven things that people have kind of worked out over thousands of years. You have to have some kind of respect, and there is something to it. There's got to be.
Mm.
Whether it's right for you, whatever that philosophy is up to you, I guess. But I mean, there's a lot of proven things out there. I think that could really benefit people the way they think about things, the way they approach things.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, I just thought of this. You're kind of like, there's this quote. We both watched Joe Rogan, but
Oh yeah.
there's this quote, and he's talking about it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And you
Whoa,
kind
I haven't
of,
heard that one. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
yeah. It's like it's better to be prepared than not prepared type thing. And you
Yeah.
kind of meet that I don't know saying, because I mean you were in the Coast Guard and you're trained for all these things, and I don't know how does that make you feel, like coming into gardening after being in the Coast Guard and all that. It's like a whole different perspective than someone that just kind of has been, you know, a gardener or a farmer.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes into like the balance, the balance of life, and yeah, just being prepared. I think it's good. I like to see it as being responsible, being responsible for whatever it is. It's like understanding where food comes from, understanding I love gardening, obviously, understanding that not everything that I eat, I still shop at a grocery store and stuff, but trying to get to the point to where I can eat all that I want out of my garden as far as vegetables go. All the best things, all my favorite things, I can grow them myself. I don't have to go and see if the store has them. I don't have to try, something. So, I can grow what I want and I can have it fresh, when I want it. I like that idea. Knowing where the food comes from. Um, but at the same time, like you said with the Coast Guard stuff, I mean, I am a weapons enthusiast. I'm a firearms enthusiast. I do believe that you have to be prepared for situations that aren't going to be comfortable, that you're not going to expect. It's better to be prepared than not, and that kind of goes along with my farming, my gardening, being responsible for some of my food, and it's good. It gets me outside. It's healthy. It's productive. Um, it's not just me. I'm not the only one that likes it. Like people appreciate it. People that my family, they're like, wow, this looks really good. This is awesome that you're out here all the time doing all this hard work. I was like, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. I enjoy
Um,
it. Yeah.
so do you hunt too, or being a firearms?
No, I haven't really gotten into hunting at all. I grew up in the city. I grew up in Southern California. Never really had any opportunities for hunting at all. I am a big fisherman. I love fishing, all types of fishing. I was able to do that at a little city park that we had down the street. It was called Mile Square Park, and they had two good ponds there. They weren't lakes; they were ponds. Um, One of them was natural. It used to be part of the farmland there back in the day. Um, the other pond was basically just like a giant swimming pool. It was man-made, but they had some bluegill in there. They had some bass. They'd stock it with trout every once in a while, and I'd ride my bike down there and just start fishing on my own. And I'd get out on a charter boats every once in a while with some family friends, and we'd go out off the coast of California there and fish for barracuda, bonita, some yellowtail, things like that. But I've been fishing my whole life. I really do like to fish. I'm not against hunting. I haven't had much opportunity. There's a little bit more to it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
also like one of those things that's almost like a discipline you have to learn, because I don't know anything about hunting. I want to learn. I don't know anyone that can teach me yet, but it's like one of those things where it's not just, oh, you go sit there and eventually you just shoot an animal. No, it's like, from what I understand, it's like, I guess you could do that, but you're not gonna know where to sit, and you're not gonna, if you're gonna do the stalk and then shoot the animal. It's like you have to know what to look for, and like as being a regular person, I don't know anything about. If I'm in the woods, everything just looks normal. But to a hunter, it's like, oh, this branch is broken this way, or there's this shit laying on the ground over here.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot to learn in that discipline.
Just like anything, there's so many different ways of doing it. You can stalk these deer, you can kind of get an idea where they are and actually creep through the woods and try to find where they are. A lot of people around here that I've talked to, they set up their stands up in the trees and they just kind of set up where they know the deer kind of generally kind of travel through or hang out. And they'll just be up in these stands for a couple of hours, and sometimes they won't get anything. I mean, sometimes longer than a couple of hours. They're just like, all right, try again tomorrow. Um, I like the instant gratification of fishing.
Yeah,
Even if I'm going for like a big fish, I'm not getting anything. It's like, all right, whatever. I'm bored. I'll grab my ultralight rod, like 4-pound test. I'll take like a 1/64 ounce, little jig, and I can catch bluegill all day. And if I send them back, I had a good time catching them. If I want to eat them, they're delicious. They're tasty little fish.
exactly. I don't think a lot of states even have. I think the cap on those is literally like 10.
Yeah, I mean, it
They're
depends, but yeah, it's a lot.
plentiful.
Sometimes it's unlimited. You can take as many as you want.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoy fishing too. I kind of have a similar story. Is like there's a lake near my house growing up, and we would go and fish there. We'd also go swimming there, which, to be honest, it wasn't the cleanest pond ever, so that was a little questionable. But
Well, yeah, yeah. That's like the pond I fished in as a kid. It's like, should I have been eating those fish? Maybe not. Who knows?
but at least you know where they're coming from, and that's kind of a cool thing too about your gardening is like, oh, you know where it's coming from, and it's like healthier because you know it's not monocrop. Um, I don't know. What do you have for knowledge on like monocrop agriculture? Because I know it's really not that good.
Yeah, I mean, with my gardening, I watch a lot of YouTube. I've gone into a lot of rabbit holes with like these people who are into like homesteading, self-sufficient, type, you know, farmers, whatever they're trying to do. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can agree that monoculture farming, from what I've seen, it's not sustainable. Um, I was stationed in Ohio. Ohio is very nice, good, flat, fertile land. There's a lot of corn that comes out of there. I've driven across these states and these counties, and when there's not corn growing on these fields, it's just dust. It really is just powdered dust. Um, Soil's not supposed to look like that. It's supposed to look like how it does in my garden. You dig it down about an inch. You stick your hand in it, and you look at it. It's black. It's moist. It's rich. It's full of organic material. From what I've seen with these monoculture farmers, they're basically just spraying. It's like hydroponics is what they're doing. They've drained the soil of any nutrition. They've used it all up. It's basically just sand at this point. It's very dusty. They're spraying fertilizer onto these fields to feed these plants through nutritious water, not necessarily the soil that's in the ground. It's all been used up. They just have to keep doing that and doing that and doing that. There's nothing that's being added back to the soil as far as organic material that'll sustain that. It's a lot of work to do that. You're covering entire fields with organic material every season, at least to help keep it healthy. I understand why it doesn't happen that way. It's much easier just to load up a truck full of nutritious water and just spray it on the plants and just harvest them and be done with it and do it again next year. But it's not the best. I don't think it's a good way to go.
No, the thing is, it's just like you think about it. Nothing. It's like, well, it's like a logistical problem almost because it's
Okay.
actually gonna. We were talking the other day about that podcast with Sadhguru that Joe Rogan did, and how he talked about the vitamins that you're getting from this fertilizer that's in the food is not really that good for you in comparison to getting true vitamins from like a rich soil like your garden. Um, so it almost leads to the idea of like, oh, hey, what if we did like a rotation crop? So it's like one season we do this field. It would be not cost effective for the farmers, and farmers kind of have it tough as is now. There's actually a whole documentary. I'll go into that in a second. But if they were to do rotations so that you have 4 fields and over time you do one field for one season and almost do it like a clockwise rotation, and give that soil more time to, and like spread compost over the whole thing, because I'm sure there's plenty of dead material you have from farming to
Yeah.
begin with. Like if you're doing
Le-
corn,
le-
you have plenty of
Leaves and
husk.
grass,
Yeah,
just like garden trash. You can just lay it down and yeah.
exactly. And like if you did it in a system like that, it would give the soil more time to revitalize itself. Someone had to have thought of that before. I can't be the first person to think of that.
No, that's the way that like traditional farming, like in the early times of our country, and even going back into Europe before then, and they had rotational crops. That's something that they did. Um, I looked into that a little bit. I kind of got an idea for it. There are people that say that it really doesn't matter. If you are adding the proper nutrition back into the soil, you don't necessarily need to rotate your crops. Um, but then again, this isn't like hobby gardening stuff like I'm doing. These are people that are trying to make money off of gardening the most effective, and I guess healthy way possible. Um, but all that stuff's a lot of work. The thing that's nice is that food is relatively cheap. If you want to buy a head of lettuce, what does it cost? Like a couple of bucks if you're buying organic, whatever, you know? It's only a couple of bucks for a head of lettuce. It's very convenient. It's very easy. But you have these giant corporations, these giant companies that are running this whole thing. Like you said, logistics is huge. Like these trucks that are moving this stuff. I mean, it's a huge monster. It's a huge mechanism that just keeps going, and it makes food very accessible for everybody.
It,
But I would think, what if you took some of the burden off these major corporations and you did have more farms that could make could make money selling lettuce to people, selling basil, these small farm operations. You might be paying a little bit more money, but $2 for a head of lettuce, or $3 or $4 for a head of lettuce, but it's a local place down the way, and you know that it's a good business, it's a good product. I don't know. I think it makes sense to me.
no, yeah, I agree. I think, well, yeah, that's the thing is it's become such a profitable business off for the corporations running it, um, that local farmers kind of have a hard time supporting or getting the support they need from the buying marketplace. Um, so I think that kind of it would be nice to see. It's kind of like going into like why local businesses are important. You get to support your community, and that's why things at like a mom and pop shop are a little bit more expensive. But you know these people, you want to help out their business, so you go there instead of going to like Walmart or something.
Hmm.
Given there's more variety at Walmart or this or that. The thing about it though is there's consequences to that machine that people don't really realize, and I think down the line, maybe not today, maybe not in the next few years, but 10 years from now, we might start to see different effects from this monocrop like production line. Because yeah, it's profitable, but like Sadhguru was saying in this podcast, if you haven't seen that podcast, I would very much recommend it. Even if you're someone that doesn't like Joe Rogan, it's a very, very interesting podcast. But he talks about how the vitamins, like the soil, is like the basis of life on Earth. So if you destroy the soil, it gets to this point where children 10 years from now might have bones that break easier because the vitamins aren't as strong or they didn't metabolize correctly. Um, and these are like lasting effects that we're going to see if we continue doing this. And he talks about like he's kind of like an activist in trying to get people to do multi-crop farming rather than monocrop agriculture.
You bring up that point about, you know, most people think, okay, there's consequences to everything, right? Like there's things that we don't know yet what we're doing, like your point about what's going to happen 10 years from now if people are having these vitamin deficiencies. You know, we're going to see some after effects. I thought about this the other day because it got brought up, and I've thought about it before. We used to have lead in our gasoline in the 70s. well, the 70s and before, from my understanding, it was like I think 78 or 79 they stopped putting lead in the gasoline. So up until that point, every exhaust system from every car driving down the street was spraying some kind of like particulate lead into sidewalks, the sides of roads, um, people's gardens. If you kept a garden on the front of your in front of your property and there's cars that drive by, there's like lead just kind of coming out of the exhaust. And I heard that it might explain. I don't know. I don't know if there's a conspiracy theory or if it. I don't have anything to back this up. Just something that I heard. But there have been cases of or signs of brain damage from lead or lead exposure around those time periods. I know they talked about like crime kind of being pretty bad in the 70s, and they're saying maybe it's some effects of lead kind of being in more things. I mean, not just gasoline, but
Pain.
paints and things like that. That's
Wow.
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Leaded gasoline was a thing, and
Huh.
that exhaust was going everywhere you can think of, parking lots,
Jesus, that's
people's
crazy.
people's garages.
You gotta think also, people hear about the this kind of goes into public relations, which I took classes in. Um but you gotta think everyone knows about lead paint, but
Mhm.
I've never known that about gasoline or
That's
anything.
what's called unleaded gasoline now. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was the late 70s, early 90s when they stopped putting it in there. I guess it
Okay.
helps to make the engine run better. It makes it fire better, as far as the spark
Yeah.
combustion goes. It's like a cleaner combustion, I think.
Mhm.
But something happened, and they figured out like maybe we should stop putting lead in gas. If
Huh.
it runs, similarly.
Yeah, that's
What
I
is
didn't
what?
even know that.
I haven't researched this. It was just a thought that I had because you mentioned that about the vitamin D deficiencies, whatever. But
Yeah, that's crazy though. Like,
yeah, there's
just
got to be a
think
lot of
about that.
examples of that and all kinds of things. So why did they all of a sudden stop adding this in there?
Well, there used to be cocaine in Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That was like a whole thing. Like, I just think it's crazy that I haven't heard of that before, and I never knew why it was called unleaded gasoline.
yeah.
And so, it could just be that I was oblivious to it, or the fact that like maybe there was like a whole PR thing to push that lead paint is bad. So no one realized that, oh, the lead and gas was bad. Because that's like a big thing with public relations. It goes along with recycling too. Um,
Public safety,
well, public
child
safety,
child
yeah.
child development.
Mm-hmm.
There's lead being sprayed around, and there's kids playing in the street.
Exactly. But the thing with public relations is its whole goal is to um, take the eyes off the negative look on a company or a person. So what they do is they run PR campaigns to. The biggest example is when PR was public relations was founded, and this was in like the 1900, like early like 1914, 1913, or no, excuse me, 1920, because it was right after World War One. This guy Ivy Lee, he's actually the guy that created propaganda. Um, and so what the whole thing was is Rockefeller, there was this thing called the Ludlow Massacre. It was like Ludlow, California, I'm pretty sure, which was an old mining town and everything. And so what happened was they didn't like how they were getting treated, so they went on strike. Rockefeller, not liking this, he owned the police and he hired mercenaries because they couldn't live in the town because Rockefeller owned the town. So when they went on strike, they went into like a camp. What happened was Rockefeller sent the police and this like militia group that he hired in huge massacre, like 40 people died or something like that. But there was a news reporter there reporting on it. News reporter got away, and everyone hated Rockefeller. He was no one wanted anything to do with him. They hated his guts, like all of America. So he brings in this guy Ivy Lee, that was a propagandist during World War One. And so what he did was he said, "Hey, I want the world not to hate me anymore." And Ivy Lee created the term public relations because they figured it was wrong to run propaganda to the masses of your own country against, or to save someone in your own country or whatever. And so he coined the term public relations. And so the whole thing is propaganda to save a being or a company. That's what a lot of people don't know. And so what companies do nowadays is, especially like big oil or like if there's like a chemical spill or something, what they do is they try and like, if something gets blamed on a company, they try and take the blame away from them. So like with recycling, the whole thing for recycling was getting people to recycle rather than having companies use resources that were less harmful to the environment, because it's cheaper to like, plastic is cheaper to ship than glass. So what they did was they ran a whole campaign for like, you were a kid in the 90s, you probably saw they made a cartoon for recycling.
My childhood was, especially Southern California, it was all recycling, the environment, all that stuff. That might contribute to me being the avid gardener that I am.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there was a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, that was a PR campaign run by companies because people were saying the Earth's going to die, which if we don't do something, I mean, it is. But, like, it's kind of crazy to think the effects that might have been a PR campaign putting the lead poisoning and stuff and lead side effects on lead paint, because it could have been easily put on gas, because that was probably much more prevalent than kids eating paint chips.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And probably easy. Oh, I mean, it's so widespread.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they had to change the fuel. Like you think about a fuel source, you know, just like even just electricity or about like a fuel source is very precious, very valuable. We're constantly looking at cheaper forms, more efficient forms, whatever it is. They had to rechange. They had to take something out of their fuel source because they thought it was that important.
Wow.
They took lead out of it because they're just like, that's a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So just like think about that. That's kind of wild. It just kind of like all encircled for me there, because it just like a light bulb clicked that could have been like the put on, get away from the gas companies and go for the paint makers, you know?
Yeah. Did you ever get it talking about advertising and stuff? Did you ever get into the show Mad Men?
I watched the first episode, but I was watching it. So with me in shows, it's like, if I have the time, I will watch an entire series in like 3 days.
Oh yeah.
But what happens a lot of the time is I'll come home from work, I'll do my thing, but when I go to watch it, I'll watch a few episodes and then I fall asleep, and then I end up losing interest just because like I fell asleep 10 times in the same episode.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I do that too.
But that show you were saying, sorry.
Yes. So it's just an interesting show. It's won awards, I'm pretty sure. The only reason I know about the show, I was in Kuwait in the Coast Guard, and I was on this base. It's basically just a bunch of tents and containers and things, and they had this little library where they'd lend out DVDs and books and things. I was just so bored of my time off. I didn't want to work out. I was just like, I don't know. I just needed some entertainment. I rented Mad Men just to do it, just because I was like, I'm just going to watch something. And that's the one that I'd heard was good. And I just ran through that entire series while I was there. And it was very good, but it has to do with the advertisers. And well, you saw the first episode, I'm sure you know, but advertising and how I remember the one episode where the main character was somehow, he made it so that the tobacco company, the cigarette manufacturer, had like a nice spin on it, so that it was, I don't know, it was just advertising's powerful, you know, especially if it's done right. It's very effective and it can really influence a lot of different things.
Well, that's actually super interesting, because it's like, that sounds like an awesome show for one, but it's like,
you keep going with it, give it a chance. The first episode was whatever, but it gets better.
The crazy thing is, it's like, I know vaping's better than smoking cigarettes, but the revitalization of that the tobacco / nicotine companies came into, because kids weren't smoking cigarettes really at all come 2010.
The numbers have gone down. I think they're still down. They might have gone up recently, but they've been going down. Yeah.
Yeah, but like when I was in high school, no one smoked cigarettes. No one did any of that stuff. And what Juul and some of the big vape companies, which is they're good for quitting smoking and everything, which I'm with them on that. But what they did was they marketed to kids again, kind of. So it was like, and it's like hearsay. I get
Yeah.
that. But I think it was crazy because you saw this huge resurgence of kids using nicotine again, which kind of lends back to that public relations thing of like, oh, we're kind of kicked out on cigarettes now. Why don't we push this thing that we're using to get people off cigarettes to the youth? Because like, oh, it doesn't smell bad and it's not bad for you.
I vape. I'm very much addicted to nicotine. I have been for decades at this point. But I do believe vaping is safer than smoking, than taking actual ash and that tar into your lungs. Vaping isn't that. It's heated, but it's not burnt. I think that's a huge difference. Um, Going back to what was it you said? It was I forgot. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But let me go on to this though. So I've done a little bit of research. The British government, they have socialized healthcare, socialized medicine. It's to their benefit to come up with effective and economical alternatives to smoking because it's socialized medicine. They can't just, I don't know. That's my theory anyway. They endorse vaping to any of their patients that have any kind of emphysema or they're trying to quit. They actually have vaporizers in their pharmacies, in their hospitals that they're willing to give to people if they will quit smoking. They've done their own studies. They've done their own research. They have decided that that is the best thing for their citizens, who they're paying a lot of good money for their healthcare because it is socialized. This is what the government decided is the best, most effective way to go about this. Patches, nicotine patches, I think are probably the best, or the nicotine gum, whatever. But I think vaping is more effective at helping people quit. If vaping nicotine could be as safe as ingesting caffeine through coffee, I would endorse it. I think that could be something. Maybe there's nicotine drinks that people could enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Half a dosage of whatever nicotine into this sports bottle of water that's healthy for me. It's marketed properly.
Yeah.
But it's got that little bit of nicotine to where you're not smoking. You just get a little bit of a kick because that's really what nicotine is. It gives you a little bit of an energetic, just kind of boost. It is very addictive. It is habit forming. I know.
Yeah.
But if there's safer ways of ingesting it, I think people should be open to it. And we shouldn't just be shutting things down just because it looks like the old thing or we don't know enough about it. So we're just going to shut it down completely because we don't want to learn.
Oh yeah. I completely agree with that. I just think well, for one, I think if you can, don't do nicotine just in general, but I think you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Just because it is habit forming. I mean, I haven't said this on podcast, but I've been addicted to nicotine for a while too. So, and it's not, use a lot of money and everything. I just think the problem is just like when people start using nicotine through vaping when they didn't use it previously. I think it's a very good use to stop smoking. I just think that the way it's marketed, the way it was, I should say, it can't be marketed that way to get people on it.
I just remembered what that point that I forgot was the marketing for kids. I can see that, especially. Here's the thing that I heard that I agree with is that most adults like the same thing that kids like. I like strawberry donuts. I like strawberry jam, candy watermelon. That's what a lot of these vape flavors are. You could argue the bright packaging, the flavorful colors, the candy colors are marketed for kids, but I'll tell you right now, like I like candy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 40 something years old.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's marketed to me. They know exactly what I like. I don't think it's necessarily for the kids. I think systems like the Juuls and the Pods, those cheap little gas station vapes, I think they're very convenient. They're found everywhere. And that is easy access for these, for high school kids, even junior high kids, getting these things from their older friends. That's really what it comes down to.
Exactly.
Is it better than cigarettes? Yeah. So, I don't want these kids to, get addictions. I wish
Oh
they'd wait
yeah.
as long as possible for their developing brains and let their brains form before they decide to alter them and things like that. But it's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah,
You know,
that's fair. That is
it's going
fair.
to be, it's going to be something.
So let me just hold you there. We got to restart the thing real quick.
Yep.
So there's actually this one, and I agree completely with what you're saying. But it was Jewel in specific. There was two or three commercials, especially on YouTube and everything, actually,
Mm.
that I saw that were quite concerning back in the day. Because I remember it was kind of like around when I started getting into nicotine. Um, and what it was like those kind of like how Budweiser does commercials, like people partying and like having a great time, and it shows like, oh, if you want to be in, you do this. And it was a Juul commercial, and that's kind of like where I see that issue was, um, because yes, it's gonna happen anyways, and like younger people have been using nicotine for a long time, but marketing like that for these types of devices and stuff, I think could be seen as an issue just because it's on YouTube, it's on TV, and that stuff like, well, actually, it couldn't have been on TV because that's outlawed, but it was on YouTube. It's these places where YouTube is predominantly people 14 and till like 25, I think. That's like the main audience, at least at the time. So when you're putting stuff there, there's like this almost like moral conundrum you fall into, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, I never saw those commercials for Jewel. I mean, I wasn't targeted, I guess, with like my YouTube searches or whatever it is, but I never saw those commercials. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure like once they figured out like, hey, we're selling a bunch of these in 7-Elevens. We're selling a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of these at these corner markets. I mean, they're still motivated by money. That's how they feed their families as a
Yeah.
company, but targeting children, I mean, maybe that's why they had such a hard time. If they were purposefully, like intentionally trying to market to kids, then yeah, that's not right. That's not
No,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's just kind of like the conundrum I have with that. And
You have
I'm
to,
like totally
yeah.
with the whole, oh, this is good to quit. Eh,
Think about kids and advertising. Like again, I was a kid in the late '80s and teenager in the '90s for the most part. Yeah, Budweiser, Coors, Spuds McKenzie,
Was there
bikini girls
cigarette
on TV. What's that?
was there cigarette commercial? When did they stop
Yes,
having the cigarette
I'm
commercials? Was
pretty
that
sure
early 2000s?
I remember cigarette commercials when I was a kid. I can't tell you the exact date, but I think you're right. It might have been like the late '90s or 2000s when they stopped doing that. But all that stuff, alcohol was advertised like crazy, cigarettes. I mean, Joe Camel talking about cartoon characters, being the spokes characters for these cigarette and beer companies. I mean, it was in your face.
Yeah.
Um, that's how I grew up, seeing this. I was like, yeah, I can't wait till I
Hmm.
can have a beer and go
Yeah,
go hang out on the beach with all my friends. And that's what
exactly.
that's what I did. They weren't wrong. It was fun.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if you need to show that to kids and make it appealing to them.
Exactly. Well, the crazy thing is, alcohol is still marketed like super wide, but you can't. This is another kind of interesting thing is you can't market at all for cannabis,
Yeah.
but it's technically safer than alcohol. I'm not gonna push this debate or anything. I just find it kind of interesting because I have a friend that works at for one of those companies, and he's like, yeah, we can't advertise at all. Like if I post a picture on Instagram of me and like my company's thing, I'll get in trouble.
But yeah,
Um,
I mean, yeah, good because you have the federal side of it, and then you have the state side of it. I don't understand. I don't know why you'd want to get into that business. It just seems so complicated. You can't put any of the money that you're making into any banks because they're all federally backed and it's federally illegal. So you have to resort to giant safes and armed guards to transport cash, like a lot of cash out of these places.
really, I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, that's my understanding. They've dealt with that in Colorado. I'm pretty sure California. They've all dealt with cash, vaults, just a lot of money that they can't put into banks because of the
Wow,
federal law.
that's crazy.
What do you do with that? I mean, I don't know, just logistically, it just seems nuts. And then what if something changes and all of a sudden they come after you? It's like, I know your state legalized it, but we're deciding that they don't have any say. We're gonna take all this money that you made. We're gonna back tax.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just seems like a nightmare. It can
Yeah.
either be really good or really bad. I don't know.
No, I get that. And well, actually, I think we're kind of lucky in the sense that that might not end up being a thing because didn't it? They're working on passing a law that makes it federally legal right now, and I think it passed in the House. I think they have to send it to either the Senate, and then I think it goes to yeah, I think it has to go through the Senate, but it doesn't happen for a while. I remember seeing some news. I can't tell you 100% if I'm right. I remember hearing about it.
Yeah, I think stuff like that gets through. I don't follow this stuff, but I think it gets through the House pretty easily, and then when it gets to the Senate, it becomes very complicated because that's all the state stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. I'm a state that depends on this money from the federal government, whatever it is, and I pass this, I'm gonna piss off this person, and we're not gonna get the same state funding that we had before. I don't know how these deals work, but I'm sure it's pretty similar to that.
Well, it's kind of like
Um,
the COVID relief bill had like a bunch of kind of sketchy stuff in it. I remember hearing about that too. Um,
talk about not knowing what's going to happen in like 10, 15 years. Like there's stuff that went on the last couple of years and they're happening now that we're going to see in 10 years and be like, what was happening? What went on?
yeah. Well, did you watch the Snowden documentary or film show?
I saw the film. I have seen a couple of documentaries. It was a few years ago when that stuff was really going off. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Patriot Act after 9/11, given 9/11 was fucking awful, we needed to do something about it, but the liberties that gave the government was kind of wild. We don't have to get too into it, but it kind of just goes into the effects of we see that 10 years later with Snowden kind of releasing all that. So like bills that get passed, it's kind of like not everyone has the time, but if you're someone that's like in poli sci or something like that, maybe take some extra time and let people know what these bills are all about because there's some stuff that gets snuck into them that's kind of wild.
I mean, it's terrible. These things get passed and there's always something added in there. I mean, these things they're unreadable.
Oh
These
yeah.
things that are passed, they're unreadable. There's no way. The people who are supposedly writing these things have a staff of like a dozen people working on this stack of documents. What's the point of that? Why is it so it's so convoluted, it's so wasteful, it doesn't
Hmm.
make any sense at all.
I
Um,
think I think the main thing is that what they're trying to do is like get stuff like we need this passed, so they're trying to make compromises with like 30 different people. Like, oh, you need more funding for this, so we're gonna put that in the bill and stuff like that.
that's craziness. That's nonsense.
Yeah, instead of
How do
like,
you how do you count? How do you count for these monies when they're constantly just switching back and forth? These
hmm
crazy bills. I don't know.
yeah, it gets to like a point where it's kind of wild, and it's almost taking compromise in the wrong way. Instead of compromising on a single thing, like it kind of should be like, oh, I don't know, bring up
But,
some for
but
whatever bill. Like, why don't we make it so weed's legal everywhere, but you can only have like 5 grams on you, rather than like everyone can have a pound of weed. Like
yeah,
maybe something like that, rather than being like, oh, we'll make it so everyone can have a pound of weed, but we want to have the government pay for our truckers unions gas or something, because that's kind of like what's happening. It's kind of wild.
yeah. Nobody wants to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of weird. I mean, just in very very simple everyday businesses and things. There's all kinds of weird things. It's just like I wish I didn't know that. I wish I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that that's what you had to do to get this done, or this is what needs to happen for this to happen. Um, I
There's a
mean, these representatives, they essentially work for us. I know that comparison's been made before, but it's like they're supposed to represent us, so we trust them because we elected them to make the right decisions and do what's best for us overall. But that's not necessarily what's happening. You're basically giving them a key to a vault full of money, and you're just trusting that they're going to make the best decisions and do the best things with them. I get it. You can't make everybody happy, but how badly can you just make everyone unhappy? How can you mess that up so badly? You
mm-hmm.
know, you're just completely not looking into the interests of the people you represent.
Yeah, I get that, and I think that kind of plays into the big divides we're seeing. Because, like, when you look at it in terms of like a political sense between Democrat and Republican, what people don't realize is the only difference between Republicans and Democrats is their social look, really. When you if you break it down and look at the bills that get passed under both Democrat and Republican, fiscally they're almost exactly the same. Um, People will say, "Oh no, Biden took down the stock market," or "Oh no, Trump's pumping the the stock market to look like it's good, but it's going to crash in 3 months when he gets out of office," or whatever. Good. I mean, both those things kind of did happen, but honestly, it wasn't the president doing it. So,
Yeah. People, I don't know. I think people place a lot of importance on the presidency, which I get it. He's a figurehead. He is like the main guy, but it's so much more than that, you
oh
know?
yeah, there's
It's
so much more to the system.
he really doesn't have that much of a say. I don't know. Local politics are the most important thing you can probably pay attention to,
Hmm.
honestly. Who's running your city? Who's running your county? Who's running your state? I feel like that's so easy to dismiss because you just take it for granted. No, it's just, a town hall. There's some guys doing work over there. It's like, no, what are they doing? What are they approving? What are they budgeting for? These directly affect your local taxes. You can't escape it. This is where you live.
Hmm.
If something's happening off in Washington State, you don't like it. It doesn't really affect you that much. You're geographically away from it. But local
Exactly.
politics are really, really important to pay attention to.
It kind of goes to that saying that's like, you have to fix your home before you can save the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's like kind of the big thing that people aren't getting right either, which I've never actually thought about. It's something I was getting wrong, I gotta say, because you're more worried about what's going on, the stuff that barely affects you, in comparison to the stuff that's going on right at home. Because like, I don't know who the uh, what's it called, mayor of my town is or whatever. But that
Mhm.
stuff's actually important because they're dealing with your school's funding and how that stuff gets all done and all the road work that gets done in your town.
Mhm.
Maybe that's more state, but
It's a lot of work paying attention to this stuff. I mean, I don't do it. I
no,
like to
yeah.
preach it, and I should be more involved in what's going on. I am paying taxes where I live. I
Hmm.
should understand who these people are and what they're about. But it's easier said than done.
Yeah,
It's not fun stuff to pay attention to. It, you know.
it's tough.
That's
It
why that's why we elect people to do it for us, essentially.
exactly.
You know.
Yeah,
Um,
and a lot of them don't make on their promises or this or that. But
yeah.
anyways, um, I think that that's very kind of a fruitful conversation. It's just kind of tough because like I'm not an expert in it, and
I'm not either.
yeah, so it's just like it's stuff to think about. But yeah, man, it's just like we live in a wild world, and especially with like public relations going on, which I think is kind of like a huge thing I learned in school. Like public relations is just wild, and it kind of leans on a lot of the stuff that's going on politically and with big companies. And I don't have anything against big companies, honestly. Um, like they're necessary. I just think when they should be accountable for the things and not try and like put the blame somewhere else, like on the people, like recycling did. That's kind of like my big thing. It's like it's kind of like if you look at the Soviet Union, why it collapsed. It always it always lied to its people. It always tried to say that, oh, this isn't our fault, this is so and so's fault. And you kind of saw that with they have one aircraft carrier in the Russian military. It doesn't work anymore because they built it up as almost like, think of it like, I watched a video and they said it was like Instagram for a country. They're trying to show off that, oh, we have an aircraft carrier and stuff,
Mhm.
but they didn't build up any of the logistics to keep it going, or they didn't even have a battle group. It used to, when they were fighting the war in Afghanistan, I think it was Afghanistan, one of the Middle Eastern countries that they were fighting in. They had the aircraft carrier stationed outside of it, but it broke down all the time. They had to have a tugboat for it.
Yeah, there's no infrastructure to
Yep.
support this thing. It was like a one-off thing. Um, yeah, yeah. I
But
mean,
like the thing is, making this like parallel to that is, if we're a company, we need to be accountable for the things we do, and instead of putting the blame somewhere else, it's just, if you build a foundation of a house on, I don't know, pebbles rather than on a solid foundation. Pebbles is like, you build it off of kind of like lies. Eventually it's going to fall or crash or crumble. If you build it on a solid foundation where you're open and like, oh, we screwed up, we're going to fix this. Or we're doing the wrong thing, we're going to fix this and we're going to make right on it. And that's just kind of a big thing that PR kind of limits companies from doing, because they have this option of being like, oh, this isn't our fault, it's lead paint's fault. So,
yeah. I mean, I have nothing against Walmart either. From having lived across the country a couple of times, Walmart gives good, consistent products to people around the country that might not necessarily have access to them. You really do have these small towns or these counties where the fact that they have a Walmart is a really good, positive thing. They have access to products that are reasonably priced that they didn't have before, you know? Um, I mean, that's the positive side of it. You know, I think it's been a big benefit to a lot of people.
mm-hmm.
But then, just like anything else, you can break it down into like, well, they're also doing this and they're also doing that. I don't know. Um, Unless it's something egregious, something absolutely horrible, like it just, I don't know. It's kind of the way business is made. Like, do more people benefit from this monster or more people hurt from this monster? You have to pick one or the other. Just go with it,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
You know, right now, I think more people benefit, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's a kind of like politics and how we should think about politics. It's like a certain scenario based thing. So it goes to each company. Is this company better or worse? Is this entity better or worse? But there's, like you're saying, it goes along with everything else in life. It's like a yin and a yang, or a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's super important to everyone. Just because, like, we're in this point where we think, it kind of goes along with cancel culture and stuff like that. It's like you're defined by this one thing, but it's not. Nothing is that way. Going
No.
to the gym isn't that way, and the gym is a pretty simple thing. It's like, oh, this is good for my body, but I'm gonna be sore tomorrow, so that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a balance there. There's a good and a bad, and it's like that to everything, and everything's always changing and evolving. So I think looking more positively on things is something we do need to start to do. And knowing that things grow and change, and that we're not defined just by our mistakes.
Yeah, and it's something that needs to be practiced. You know, it's like, all right, stick with the positive stuff. Try to remember that stuff. I mean, you have to practice it in order to, you know, hopefully get to that point to where, you know, you're good, you're positive. You know, you're feeling good with your endeavors and everything that's happening. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you don't always feel that way in life, but you can
Exactly.
work towards it and try to do the best you can, I guess. You know.
Yeah, and the same thing kind of goes with like what we were saying about local government. It's like, even just with you, like, fix your home. Not you. I'm not. I'm just saying, just you in general. It's fix your home before you can like kind of affect the world in any sense, or how you're gonna view the world. So it's like, you got to build yourself to your best you before you can be positive for everyone else. You know,
Yeah.
because we find a lot of people with depression and this and that, and it's not fun. And people wonder why all this bad stuff keeps happening to them. But it goes on the whole thing of what I was talking about last podcast, is if you become accountable, and what we were talking about earlier. If you're accountable, if you take, let me restart. If you become accountable for the position you are in your life, you're able to fix those things. If you put the blame somewhere else, or be like, oh, I had a bad childhood, so I can't do this, you're pretty much limiting yourself and you're never going to grow. But if you take accountability for the things that you didn't even have an effect on, but it affected you, you take power of that and you can actually like work towards fixing that. It's like kind of going along with addiction in the sense that like, oh, the first step in solving a problem is realizing there is one. And I think accountability is kind of like that thing for people that are having a tough time.
Even talking about like this like mental health stuff and therapies and things that the way that they've come along nowadays, like the first half of my life when I was a kid, it wasn't mental health wasn't really a thing. Like nobody really talked about it. It was just kind of like something like, oh, you're sick, you go see like a doctor, you go see a therapist, and that's very private. You don't talk about it. But the way that people talk about now, like with mindfulness and just recognizing what signs of depression are and mental illness and just being more understanding of it, completely different, from when I was a kid. I think it's good. I think positivity is just what you need to strive for. Just find the positivity in everything that you can, when you can. Um, I don't think anybody can argue that that's a bad thing.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
I agree completely.
easier said than done, but it's something to strive for.
And
Absolutely.
so is like gardening kind of like brought some ease to like any, has it been like kind of an outlet for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's been said before, but it is my form of therapy in a way. It's something that I can just focus on, something that I enjoy. Going back to fishing, I get almost instant gratification. I can see these things growing. I can see them, you know, being successful and my hard work actually paying off and things like that. It's very good. It's very positive. That is why I do like it. But then you have the other benefit of here's what I grew all summer. You want to try one, and you give it to your friend, you give it to your family, and they get to try it. Like, wow, this is the best tomato I've ever had. This is the best asparagus I've ever had. And I mean, it's almost limitless the satisfaction you get off these things. And then you do it again next year. You
Yeah.
know?
That's so, I'm so happy you said that because that's another thing in American society, which I love America and everything. That's another thing that's missing. That actually is very disproportionate to how the rest of the world actually is. So there's documentaries on it and everything. If you ask someone from Europe or like a different country if they were sad, what they would do to be happy, most people say they would go and help someone else. In
Oh yeah.
America, what most people say is, I'm going to do something for myself to make myself feel better.
Mhm.
And that's kind of crazy to think, like, why would I do something for someone else? Growing up, like, that's what I would have thought.
Mhm.
Just cause, not because I was taught that way, but that's just kind of like how the consumerism society that we're in has led us to. So I think it's really cool to show that like you use your garden to help other people and bring other people joy in a certain way, and it's gratifying and helps you in terms of happiness. And it's not, you're not doing it to help yourself, but you do get gratification from it,
Oh yeah. And
and it's
it, it,
a
it does
positive
help me though.
feedback loop.
Yeah, yeah. It does help me at the same time though, too. It's just like, I don't know, it's just talking about positivity is just overall very positive thing. You know.
Exactly.
I wouldn't get to talk about it. I introduced rabbits into my garden. I got 3 rabbits now, and their manure has been awesome on my pepper plants. I highly recommend it. I am. They are my therapeutic animals. I'm pretty sure. I really enjoy holding them. They're a lot of fun, and the family enjoys them. They're just another positive thing that I've introduced. So yeah.
So with the rabbits, how do you, are they like free roam or do they like have like a certain area? Because I know with rabbits you have to be very careful of predators like coyotes and stuff like that. Same thing with chickens.
hmm my biggest concern when I set up my area was that I want it to be hygienic. I wanted nice, good airflow going through it. Um, any type of manure or urine, if it does build up, I want it to be easily cleaned. Um, I basically have them in cages. I have them in cages on the back of my garage. I have them hung up on wire. So they're elevated off the ground, probably about 5 feet. Um, there's no way anything can get them. Nothing's going to get up there. Um, what else? That's pretty much it. They're just hanging on cages on the back of my garage, and pretty basic setup. I'll scoop up their manure when it drops down there when it collects, and I'll just throw it on my plants. And it's just like the easiest thing ever. I get these cute little animals that everybody loves, and I get their manure, which makes my plants awesome. It's another part of the cycle that I'm completing. You know, it feels good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I actually have a question. So you as a person seem very like I don't know, worldly minded. I don't know if that came from like being in the Coast Guard and living a lot of different places, which I actually do want to ask you about.
Sure.
But do you like read into like philosophy or anything like that? Because like very open minded and worldful type of person.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen a few places around the world. Not like I don't really spend a lot of time in any. Basically, if you think about the time that a ship would spend at a foreign port, that's basically what I did. You know, maybe just like a couple of days at a time. You know, been to Southeast Asia, Latin America. Um, that's pretty much it. All around the United States. Um, I think meeting and talking to and seeing different people and just their attitudes, how they approach things. I don't know. Somehow it just kind of makes me think that from what I've seen, life doesn't have to be as complicated as I think a lot of people make it. You know, things can be simple. You can enjoy gardening. You can have a job where you make enough money to where you have the things that you need, and anything more than that, is just gravy. I think it really can be that simple. Um, Obviously, life's not that way, but I don't know. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. Maybe I don't know.
Hey man, more power to you. That's awesome. Like I love that mentality because it's like you think be nice to other people, take care of the things you need to take care of, and you know, just enjoy the passage of time.
Yeah,
And that's
I mean,
really
I'd imagine if I grew up in like Manhattan my whole life, I'd have a whole different perspective on what I wanted my life to be. I have to find this apartment downtown somewhere. Hey, this one's opening up. All right, it's going to be $1 million. All right, I'm going to need a parking spot for my new car that I just bought. You know, that could make some people happy. I mean that's fine,
mhm.
but I'm not going to do that. I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Um so going on to like yeah, man. That that's dope. I don't know. I don't know how else to put it. I just really appreciate because I feel like a lot of people don't look at life simply. So it's like I really appreciate the people that do.
But this is after decades of not living my life simply. Like 20 years in the Coast Guard, I moved every 3 years, dragging my family across all this, different elementary schools, different middle schools. I mean, a lot of chaos, a lot of instability. Um, Now I'm getting to a point to where I just want to do some simple stuff. I just want to do some easy stuff that's just very easy and just makes me happy, makes my family happy. That's what I'm going for. But I
Yeah.
mean, it was a lot of work.
Oh
You
yeah, I can only imagine, man. What got you into the Coast Guard?
Um, so basically, in high school, I was toying around with joining the Air Force. I thought that would be the best move because the Air Force is cool and they had a bunch of money. And after I joined the Coast Guard, I realized I was exactly right. The Air Force has a bunch of money and they're very cool. Maybe I should have done that instead. But um, I was going to join the Marine Corps before I joined the Coast Guard. I had a buddy that joined the Marine Corps. He seemed to like it, and seemed like it'd be hard. It'd be a good challenge. It'd be something good to do. My uncle, who's a firefighter in Arizona, gave me a call because he heard I was going to join the service. He recommended the Coast Guard because my grandfather was in the Coast Guard. I didn't really at the time. I didn't really understand that. I didn't realize that he had been in the Coast Guard. Anyways, he was. So yeah, I decided the Coast Guard was a thing. When I went into the recruiting office, I saw the posters, all the cool pictures of the boats and the orange helicopters and some guy dropping off, jumping in the water and stuff. I was like, okay, so it's gonna be like being a firefighter on the water. I could do that. That's gonna be awesome. I'll get stationed, close to home. I'll be, working near the beach and this, that, and the other. And it's not really what the Coast Guard is all the time. There's big ships. There's small little boats in the middle of nowhere in America that you never would have thought of that goes out there and they take care of the buoys and the navigation aids that are in the water and other things. And it was a lot different than I expected, but overall it was great. I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people. Learned a lot about myself, and yeah, I took care of my family all these years. You know, I could have done something that pulled in more money. That probably would have been good. Maybe something with better geographical stability. But I feel like we made it work. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a cool thing. Like, we were talking the other day and getting ready for this podcast, and we talked about, like, oh, the the Coast Guard isn't really the first thing people think about when they talk about the service.
Yeah.
They think of like the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy. But the Coast Guard is kind of crazy in the sense, like you're saying, it's kind of like firefighters on the water. And so when you look at it, and people don't realize what it is to have the Coast Guard there, and they save people all the time. And you were telling me that back in like the early night, like before the Coast Guard, it was, if you were on the ocean, like it was like being in outer space. I don't know if you want to tell a little bit more of that, just so that, like, I don't know, people kind of understand like how important this like service is to have, because so many people get saved by the Coast Guard, like when they get stranded out.
Yeah. So one of my last duty stations was on a 270-foot medium endurance cutter. It was a Tahoma out of Kittery, New Hampshire, or Kittery, Maine, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The address is different depending on where you look. It's like an old historical border dispute.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm not going to get into it, whatever. But so these ships, you know, they make their way down to Central America, Florida. They do drug interdiction. They do migrant operations. It's more than just search and rescue. These bigger ships, they do a lot down there. I forget what I'm supposed to be talking about with the Coast Guard.
Oh yeah, you're good. With the I don't know, the saving people and like.
Oh no, you're talking about what it's like. That's what I wanted to bring up. What it's like being like on a ship in the middle of the ocean, right?
Yeah,
Especially
and when the Coast Guard wasn't there.
Well, for me, being on that ship at night in the middle of the ocean, completely black. I remember thinking, because I do like history. I'm not like a super huge history nerd, but I do like historical things. But just 200 years ago, you're in the middle of the ocean. You might as well be out in the middle of space. You know, you don't have any way to get a hold of anybody. Anything goes wrong, you're on your own. You fall off this craft. You're in the water. You're dead. It's incredible that people have been doing this for thousands of years, and they've been traveling in this unforgiving, you know, landscape, and just, I don't know, it just, being out there and seeing all that just made me appreciate people who have done that and who will do that. I don't know, I'm getting a little bit emotional talking about it because it's hard to put into words, but it's at the very least, I always had the feeling of something bigger than myself just being out there. You know, just,
Yeah.
It's powerful. I know why people love the ocean. I know why people love ships and boats. It's you can't put it into words. It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
It's a love and hate thing for me too.
Mm-hmm.
There's good things that happen out there. There's bad things that happen out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's powerful.
And it kind of goes back to the whole. Yeah, you described it as humbling too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize, like, the sea and the ocean are not things to be taken lightly. Like, I've only been out maybe 5-10 times out on the ocean in a craft.
Even on a nice day, something terrible can happen in an instant, and you're just there alone by yourself. Hopefully you have a radio. Hopefully you have a cell phone. Hopefully somebody sees you. If they don't, you could be out there for hours, days. What are you gonna do?
Exactly. And if we didn't have the Coast Guard, that wouldn't, be a thing. But going back to like the love hate of it, it kind of brings us back to that yin and yang, like, balance. It's kind of like, if there's an extreme show of that, it's your time on the ocean and the water. It's like, because it can be life or death, honestly, out there. Mm-hmm. Especially before the Coast Guard was a thing. And I think it's awesome that, like, you were able to do that and I can only imagine how many people you helped, and
Yeah.
especially like anyone in the Coast Guard. It, like you said, it's a service to people and a service to, you know, it's like being a first responder, like an EMT or a firefighter.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've filled that role before. I was a nationally registered EMT, especially when I was in San Diego, and I was on a little orange boat, and I did respond to a few things, some medical emergencies on there, and most of them turned out okay. Some of them didn't. Actually,
Mm.
more didn't turn out well than turned out well. Does that make any sense what I just said?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just my experience out there. But
Well,
yeah, I've seen how ugly it can get.
get,
Not everybody makes it out of there.
mm-hmm. Especially like given the situation, especially if you're out on the water, like
Yeah, not respecting the water, not understanding the environment that you're in will get you killed.
yeah.
100%.
Same thing with being out in the wilderness. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
Austin again, the podcast you saw, he went out to Montana, and when you're out in Montana, if you're in the city, you're fine. But if you're out in the woods, it's kind of like being in outer space because like
Mhm.
you need to be able to survive on your own without any help against predators, against the elements. It's the same sort of thing. Like in being from Massachusetts and like this area that the woods doesn't go more than a few miles and you could just keep walking and you'll eventually find your way out.
Mhm.
There's massive areas of wilderness out there where you could walk miles and miles and miles and be stranded.
I remember I never really understood the vastness of our forests, like in this country in general. I was on a flight, I forget what it was, but I was east going west over the Rocky Mountains, and the pilots were nice enough to actually go low enough to where we could see the tops of the Rocky Mountain range. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna see like a mountain crest or whatever the Rockies are. It was just in this airplane going as fast as it was going. It was tens of minutes of just tops of trees, just and that was the Rocky Mountains. And we just kept going and kept going. So vast. There's no way you can get a vehicle through there. You would literally have to walk, for days to even, I don't know. It's incredible how vast it is and untouched it is.
Yeah.
There's too much out there.
And the same thing with I went to Vegas not too long ago, and when you're flying over the desert there, same
Hmm.
sort of thing. It just goes on forever, and there won't be anything for
Yeah.
must have been like at least 100 miles. Maybe that's a little exaggeration, but
No, no, you're right, man. Yeah,
it's
it's
like a
vast.
long distance. So it's just like kind of wild, and
And
I
here's what I always wondered too, because you have people talk about how overpopulated we are in this country. I was like, yeah, I get it, in like metropolitan areas, but
yeah.
with proper planning and like good, I don't know, just good planning, we have room for people. We just got to do it smart, man.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
I think that's very true. That could go. We could talk about plenty of like issues that people are complaining about that, especially with overpopulation and such, that like could be solved if we handle it correctly. But people don't really take the time to figure out the best fix for things. They just end up, you know, picking what seems the easiest, and it's not always the right answer to the problem. And I think that's a big issue. But
Uh,
with that being said,
yeah.
um, yeah, man.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up. We've been doing it for a solid like hour and 30 minutes, I think.
Awesome, man.
So I appreciate you coming on, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think it might be one of the better podcasts that I've done so far. So I really appreciate you being a part of that and sharing your knowledge and your story with me.
No, I appreciate that, man. It's a lot of random stuff that I like to talk to. I'm not a huge talker. I was a little bit nervous in the beginning, but thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it, dude.
Of course, man. Hopefully you'll come on again.
Yeah,
We'll have to plan that out.
let's do a part two. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off here, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and you guys have a nice day.
JMO.